What if the most dangerous comfort in your life is not a soft couch or a familiar habit, but the story you use to recognize yourself? If that story is outdated, it keeps you loyal to an identity that no longer serves you. By the end of this film, you'll have a simple architecture, tested by the ancient Stoics and sharpened for a noisy century, to dismantle an unhelpful identity, rebuild a stronger one without applause, and prove it under pressure. One hinged decision makes the whole thing work. I'll name it later. For now, hold the image of a mirror and the quiet question behind your eyes. Who is steering? Before we go further, a brief and humane disclaimer. This is educational philosophy, not medical, legal, or individualized advice. Use it to think clearly. For decisions about your health, your safety, or your livelihood, reflect carefully and consult qualified professionals who know your specific situation. The Stoics wanted us to train judgment, not outsource responsibility, and part of that training is knowing when to seek expert help. We live in a time that rewards reaction. Every platform asks for your nervous system. Every argument invites your outrage. The result is a society fluent in expression and clumsy with restraint. Stoicism matters now because it restores the old order of operations. First, see the event for what it is, then inspect the judgment you're adding to it, and only then decide how to act. Control what you can, understand what you can't, and treat your mind as a fortress that you are duty-bound to maintain. If you want a short sentence to carry in your pocket, try this. Stand where I can act. It sounds simple, and it is. But simple is not the same as easy. There are common confusions to clear away. Stoicism is not numbness. The Stoic does not aim to feel nothing. The Stoic trains so that feelings happen, but actions follow reason. Stoicism is not social isolation. The Stoic belongs to a city, a household, a craft. Duty and justice are central, not optional. Stoicism is not perfectionism. You will miss the mark. The point is to observe without self-pity, adjust without drama, and try again. Finally, Stoicism is not a fantasy where your inner life magically rearranges the outer world. The Stoic works with reality as it is. Power belongs to what's up to you, your choices, your attention, your standards, your craft. When reality refuses to move, the Stoic moves himself. Let's begin with first principles in plain English. Events happen. Then, almost instantly, we add judgments to those events. The traffic jam is just cars not moving. The judgment, "This is an insult to my dignity," is your own addition. That distinction matters because it marks the boundary between the world's behavior and yours. The Stoics called your faculty of choice prohairesis, the steering capacity that selects a response. It is the lever you always have. Next, there is the dichotomy of control. Some things are within that lever's reach: your thoughts, efforts, words, tone, posture, and most things are not. When you act as if everything is within your control, you waste yourself. When you act as if nothing is within your control, you abandon yourself. The discipline is to sort what belongs to you, take responsibility for it, and release your grip on the rest. If you want resilience, add voluntary discomfort, small chosen difficulties that teach your mind to be steady when unchosen difficulties arrive. Cold mornings, hard workouts, simple meals, quiet hours with no digital anesthesia. Training, not punishment. And if you want clearer priorities, practice negative visualization. Briefly imagine the loss of what you rely on: health, work, the people you love. So you meet the day with gratitude and a firmer grip on what matters. Now, nuance. The dichotomy of control is not a magical line that draws itself. In real life, it is often fuzzy, context-dependent, and entangled with other people's choices. You can influence a colleague, but not control them. You can set boundaries with a family member, but not rewrite their personality. You can train hard, but not guarantee outcomes. The Stoic response is not naive optimism. It is practical realism. Clarify your sphere of action, do your duty well, hedge against what you can't control, and accept that even excellent strategies sometimes fail. Also, voluntary discomfort is a tool, not a badge. It's useful when it sharpens judgment and expands capacity. It's foolish when it becomes theater, ego scratching itself in the mirror. And while the ancients wrote in a world of emperors and city-states, we navigate companies, institutions, and algorithms. Power dynamics exist. A Stoic acknowledges them, not to imitate cruelty, but to understand incentives and set firm boundaries without spectacle. Calm is not passivity. It is a prepared mind moving with intention in rough weather. Hold those principles. Now let's turn them into a method. Think like an architect. You're about to renovate a house you still have to live in. You need scaffolding, a plan, and a way to test the new structure in wind. The plan here has 3 parts: a mirror test, a field test, and a reset ritual. I will sketch them, and then we'll watch them work inside real lives. The mirror test takes place every morning, in writing if you can. It asks, what do I control today? What role do I need to honor? What standard will I hold even if no one notices? Keep it short, calm, and specific. The field test is your protocol for moments of heat. A 2-breath pause, a sentence to yourself, stand where I can act, and a single behavior aligned with your standard. The reset ritual is your evening audit. What events occurred? What judgments did I add? Where did I act well? Where did I act poorly? What can I do differently tomorrow? No drama, just data. The purpose of these 3 is not to produce a feeling, but to produce a track record. Identity changes when evidence accumulates. To see why this matters, meet a composite I'll call Alex. Alex is talented, good at his craft, and slowly drowning in small compromises. He says yes to every request because he wants to be agreeable. He keeps his notifications on because he fears missing out. He stays up late because he works better under pressure, which really means he's chasing adrenaline to compensate for disorganization. One morning, during a meeting he could have prepared for, he is challenged on a detail he forgot. He feels the flush. He talks over a colleague, voice tight, jaw set. He defends the indefensible. The meeting ends with an apology that doesn't land and a fracture that lingers. That scene feels dramatic. But it's the predictable end of a quiet pattern. What went wrong is simple. The event was a question about a detail. The judgment was, my competence is under attack. The reaction was reactivity masquerading as strength. In Stoic terms, Alex abandoned his post. He let the external world steer his internal one. When Alex finally gets tired of his own performance, he begins with the mirror test. He writes, I control my preparation, my tone, my pause. My role is to be a reliable partner. My standard is to state facts plainly and receive critique without flinching. He builds a tiny field test. When challenged, inhale, exhale. Say, let me check, and open the relevant document before speaking. He chooses voluntary discomfort by disabling non-essential notifications for a week and scheduling a single hour each afternoon for deep work. The first week is awkward. He forgets, he slips, he wants to explain himself, but the evening reset catches the pattern. He notices the exact moment his body surges and his voice sharpens. He names the judgment that grips him. He practices the two-breath pause. After a month, something unglamorous happens. A colleague raises an issue. He pauses, he asks for a minute, checks, and corrects himself in real time. The team notices, not because he made a speech, but because he stopped making a mess. The old identity starts to loosen, not erased by force, but outgrown by evidence. The second arc belongs to Mina, a composite of people who love too much to say no. Mina is the most dependable person in any room. She senses what others need before they ask, and she says yes before she looks at her calendar. Her reputation is a rock, but inside she feels like wet sand. The phone is always near. Sleep is optional. Mornings are triage. Eventually, the body collects the debt. She develops a minor but stubborn health problem. Nothing dramatic, just constant fatigue and a fog that makes ordinary tasks feel like wading through waist-deep water. She tries to push harder the way she always has, and the water rises. Her awakening is delayed, but it arrives in a small way. A friend asks for just a quick favor. Mina hears the familiar impulse to say yes. Instead, she asks, "Is this within my control? Is this my role? Does this serve or sabotage the commitments I have already made?" The answers are clear and they hurt. She says, "I can't." The sky does not fall. The friend is briefly surprised and moves on. Mina is shaken by how much relief sits on the other side of that short sentence. She begins negative visualization at night. For 5 minutes, she imagines life if she continues as she has. More fog, less joy, a self spread thin until she disappears. Then she imagines the opposite. Boundaries like a well-kept garden, time boxed for her craft and her rest, generosity offered from fullness rather than obligation. In the morning, she writes a single line: "My time is a duty." Her phone sleeps in another room. She creates a weekly block for solitude, a kind of Sabbath from noise, and treats it as non-negotiable. The people who benefit least from her boundaries complain. She does not argue. She repeats the sentence quietly: "Stand where I can act." 6 months later, Mina is not less kind. She is more effective. And her kindness has weight because it is chosen, not extracted. The third arc belongs to Raphael, who works with his hands and who once believed that inner life belonged to people with softer palms. He manages crews, materials, schedules, and weather. His day begins early, ends late, and has little room for romance about mindset. But he keeps running into the same wall. Reactive mornings lead to chaotic afternoons. Chaotic afternoons produce mistakes. Mistakes produce stress. Stress produces short tempers. Short tempers harm the very people he needs to rely on. He has never thought of himself as a reader of dead philosophers. Yet a friend hands him a slim book and says, "This might help." Raphael makes no speeches. He picks 3 anchors. Before the sun, he sits with coffee and writes 3 lines. What I control, what matters most, what I will not do today. On site, when things break, as they do, he runs a field script. Count 2 breaths, speak in low voice, assign a small next action, and move feet. After work, he walks without headphones for 20 minutes, letting the day settle. He adds voluntary discomfort in the simplest form. He takes the stairs, he carries what he can carry, he eats plainly on weekdays. Not to prove toughness, but to train a mind that doesn't lunge for relief at the first hint of strain. He does this quietly for a year. He still gets angry sometimes. He still misses the mark sometimes. But the crews notice. Directions are clearer, the rhythm is steadier, and problems don't spiral as often. Raphael's identity, once chained to how the day treated him, now rests on how he treats the day. These arcs share a theme. Power is local. In every story, the turning point wasn't a grand transformation. It was an ordinary choice repeated until character thickened. This is where a gentle comparison to Machiavelli illuminates rather than corrupts. Human systems are not monasteries, they are markets of interest. People safeguard their advantage. They negotiate with reality to tilt it their way. A Stoic sees this without resentment. He asks, given the incentives here, where can I stand and still be just? What boundary protects my agency without inviting unnecessary war? When a superior plays favorites or a peer grabs credit, the Stoic does not burn down the building in righteous flame. He documents work, clarifies expectations in writing, builds alliances with honest people, and continues to deliver. He refuses to be a doormat, but he also refuses to become a mirror of the very behavior he rejects. Calm authority travels farther than indignation dressed as courage. The fortress you maintain is portable. Carry it into rooms where others perform, and watch how stillness becomes its own kind of leverage. Let's return to the mirror, field, and reset, and deepen each piece. The morning mirror is where you decide what kind of ship you are sailing and what waters you expect. Describe the weather honestly. If you anticipate criticism, write it down. If money is tight, name it. If you are responsible for people, remind yourself that they might be ill-tempered, fearful, or careless today, and that your role is to meet them with standards, not mood. Then choose one virtue to practice. Courage might mean speaking plainly when you prefer to hide. Temperance might mean closing the tab when you prefer to scroll. Justice might mean giving credit before you take it. Wisdom might mean delaying a decision until the facts are in. Write the virtue and the specific behavior you will use to embody it. This is where identity shifts from language to action. You are not a disciplined person. You are a person who shuts the door for 90 minutes and does the work without theatrics. The field test will save you when your nervous system tries to spend your future on a present impulse. The rule is small, because small survives heat. 2 breaths, a simple sentence, stand where I can act. Then 1 behavior aligned with your chosen virtue. If you can't trust your mouth, trust your feet. Step away from the keyboard, walk to the window, count 10 slow paces, return. If you can't trust your thumbs, trust your calendar. Delay sending that message by 15 minutes. If you can't trust your appetite, trust your environment. Remove the trigger from your house and make the desired action frictionless. This is not weakness, it is engineering. You are designing a path where your better self wins by default. The reset ritual is the most neglected discipline because it lacks the gleam of the morning and the theater of the day. Yet the evening is where the forge cools and the metal sets. Review yourself like a craftsman inspecting a line of work. Events, judgments, choices. Where did you add a story to a neutral fact? Where did you mistake convenience for necessity? Where were you brave Where were you petty? Keep the tone of a foreman, not a prosecutor. Write one corrective for tomorrow. Then, if you have the courage, practice negative visualization. Imagine the loss of something you take for granted. The pillow will feel softer after, not because you're morbid, but because you are awake to the loan you've been given. Gratitude without sentimentality is fuel that does not burn out. I promise to name the hinge decision. It is this: remove the return policy from your own transformation. The old story will invite you back with a discount. It will whisper that you can keep your habits and get new results. That's not an offer. It's a trap. Closing the back door is not about burning relationships or making grand public declarations. It is about refusing to negotiate with the loopholes that kept you small. If late-night scrolling wrecked your mornings, you don't try to scroll less. You charge your phone in another room. If a friend only calls when they need a fixer, you don't audition for that role. You delay your response until your duties are complete and then say yes or no from a calm place. If the calendar is your enemy, you don't buy a new app. You schedule the essentials and honor them as if a paycheck depended on them, because it does. Only the currency is your character. A sensitive warning belongs here. If you're entangled with addiction, depression, or situations of abuse, the philosophy in this film is not a substitute for professional support. Courage sometimes means telling the truth to someone who can help, not trying to out-stoic a medical problem with grit. A fortress is strongest when its foundations are sound. Sometimes the bravest move is to ask for a builder who knows the ground. One of the sources you watched earlier loved the image of burning ships. It's vivid and sometimes useful, but it can tempt a romantic violence that we don't need. Ancient Stoicism rarely glorified grand gestures. It glorified steady work. Keep the metaphor if it helps, but understand its sober version. You are not required to torch your life to change it. You are required to stop rehearsing the identity that kept you stuck. That is more precise and more demanding. It asks you to show your work daily, not just once in a dramatic scene. We should talk about emotion because too many people here control your emotions and translate it to pretend you don't have any. The Stoic procedure is two-stage. First, notice the impression. Your body responds before your language does. Heat in the chest, tension in the jaw, a rush in the ears, signals. Label them quickly and simply: anger, fear, pride, envy, desire. Second, choose a fitting action. Fitting does not mean pleasant. It means proportionate to the facts and aligned with your standard. Sometimes the right action is to say nothing until you can trust your tone. Sometimes it's to say something immediately, cleanly, without embroidery. Sometimes it's to walk away. Restraint is not repression. It is the difference between a river with banks and a flood. None of this brightens your life if it doesn't reach your calendar. Routine sounds dull until you realize it is architecture. You can hang beautiful art on a rotten wall, but the art will sag. Build the wall. Wake at a consistent time, not to impress anyone, but to tell your nervous system what kind of animal it is. Put one block of deep work early, before the world's noise reaches your fortress. Eat, move, and rest like someone who respects his body as a tool. Keep a small Sabbath from the digital marketplace each week so your mind remembers what silence feels like. Do not aim at the perfect day. Aim at a day that survives your worst mood. The Stoics respected resilience over spectacle. A routine that bent without breaking was always the wiser design. There is a Machiavellian detail here that will protect you. In any organization, performance is not the only currency. Perception and alliances matter. A Stoic does not sneer at this. He studies it. He asks which stakeholders actually decide outcomes, clarifies what they reward, and makes sure his calm excellence is visible where it needs to be. He documents agreements. He uses email for summaries after conversations. He learns to say, as discussed, here are the next steps, and then he executes. None of this requires manipulation. It requires adult literacy and power. The alternative, believing that excellence alone will always carry the day, invites sorrow. Virtue is the compass. Realism is the map. Together, they keep you from walking in circles. If you worry that this all sounds severe, remember that Stoicism begins in affection for human nature. The discipline is not a scowl at the world. It is a promise to meet the world with a steady hand. You are not an algorithm's puppet or a stranger's mood ring. You are a craftsman of attention. You can build a mind that feels like home to live in, and when you do, you will be sturdier for the people who depend on you. Paradoxically, the more self-reliant you become, the more reliable you are to others, not because you do more, but because you collapse less. The motif of the mirror returns now. Tomorrow morning, you will meet your own eyes. If you want a script, keep it spare. Say to yourself, there will be interference today. I will focus on what I can control. I will carry myself with dignity. Then name one arena where you will prove it. Don't promise the world. Promise a deliverable, a draft sent, a workout finished, a conversation held without sarcasm. The miracle is not in the feeling you get while writing this. It is in the evidence you stack by evening. Identities are persuaded by proof, not pep talks. You may be wondering how long it takes before you feel like a new person. The honest answer is twofold. First, you will feel glimpses early, 15 seconds of a pause that used to be impossible. A conversation that used to hook you now passes without stealing your afternoon. Second, the deep shift takes months and years because what you are building is not a sprint high but a baseline. The old gravity doesn't vanish. It weakens as the new orbit stabilizes. You can speed the process by tightening feedback loops. Review more often. Make the desired behavior smaller and nearer. Celebrate boring wins. This is not softness, it is strategy. I promise to close a loop. At the start, I asked whether the story you use to recognize yourself might be the most dangerous comfort in your life. The answer matters because stories are self-fulfilling. If you believe you are the kind of person who always falls back, you'll treat setbacks as prophecies and stop early. If you believe you are the kind of person who corrects quickly, you'll treat setbacks as tuition and continue. The Stoic does not hypnotize himself with fantasies. He edits the story to match the facts he is willing to create. I am building a steadier man is not a slogan. It is a description of work already in progress. Remove the return policy from that work. Keep your receipts for your own audit, not for your old identity's refund counter. One more image before we land. Picture a ship at sea. Weather shifts, wind changes. The crew argues. You cannot bully the storm into being sunny, and you cannot charm the wind into blowing your way. But you can reef the sail, adjust the heading, set a watch, and keep your hands off the helm when your anger tries to wrench it. The ship you are rebuilding is not a yacht for calm bays. It is a working vessel. Scars in the wood tell a history, and the keel runs deep. The sea does not owe you a straight line. It owes you nothing. That is precisely why the work is noble. If you take anything from this, let it be portable. When heat rises, 2 breaths and the quiet line, stand where I can act. When confusion clouds the day, return to your roles. Worker, friend, parent, citizen, act with dignity inside each. When fatigue tempts you toward shortcuts, remember that shortcuts lengthen the road. When you fail, and you will, trade shame for study, then begin again at once. These are not commands. They are tools you can pick up or leave. If you pick them up daily. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its repeated choices. Give it sturdy dye. As the credits approach, I'll point to a natural next chapter. We touched briefly on negative visualization, the Stoic practice of rehearsing loss to thicken gratitude and sharpen priorities. Done well, it's not morbid, it's liberating. In a future session, we can walk that discipline with care. How to use it without spiraling into anxiety. How to combine it with time blocking, so your schedule reflects what you would truly grieve to lose, and how to use it to repair relationships before the chance disappears. For now, keep the architecture simple. Mirror in the morning, field in the heat, reset at night. Protect the fortress. Train in small discomforts. Respect power dynamics without imitating vice. And choose, once, the decision that closes the back door. You do not have to announce to the world that you have changed. You only have to leave evidence where it can't be denied. On your calendar, in your tone, in your responses under pressure, in the quiet way the people around you begin to rely on your steadiness. The old story will visit and ask for a room. Let it knock. You are building new architecture. There is no vacancy. Stand where you can act. Walk forward. The mirror is waiting, and the ship is ready for weather.